When you declare a method in a Java application, you can declare it either as a class method or an instance method. A class method is a method like the ones I've been using so far. It's called from the definition of the class. An instance method, in contrast, is called from an instance of the class, or an object. Typically, you can use class methods when you're building up a library, say, of utility functions, and you're going to pass in all of the values that the method is going to operate on as arguments passed into the method when it's called. But when you start working with more complex objects, objects that have persistent data in them, you're going to want to learn how to use instance methods. For this exercise, I'm working in a project named Instance Methods that has 3 classes. All 3 classes are starting off pretty empty. The main class has a main method that doesn't do anything yet, and there's an olive press class and an olive class. And again, they don't have any functionality yet. I'm going to design this olive class so that it can be instantiated and then its methods can be called. I'll place the cursor inside the class declaration. To define an instance method, you use the same sort of signature as you do with a class method, but you don't put in the static keyword. Remember, the main method has this word static, and all of the methods that I've defined throughout this course up to this point have also used the word static. The word static means this is a class method. It can be called from the class definition. If you drop out the word static, it's an instance method. Just as with class methods, you start with an access modifier. Public, if you want the method to be called from anywhere in the application. Private, if it's only available within the class. And protected, if it's available within this class or any of its subclasses. I'll declare this method as public. Next, you need a return type. Initially, this method will return void, or nothing. And then the method name, which I'll call crush. Add in the parentheses at the end of the method name and the pair of braces. And now you can add code to implement the method. When an olive is crushed, we'll say it hurts, so the olive says ouch. So I'll output using system.out.println the word ouch. And I'll save my changes, and that's my first instance method. Now I'll go back to the main application. Within the main application, in order to call that method, I need to create an instance of the olive class. So I'll declare a variable. I'll assign a data type of olive, the name of the class. Notice that as I type the name of the class, I get the little squiggly line underneath the class name, and that tells me that the class currently is being seen as undefined. The compiler doesn't know where it is. So I'll press Control Space, I'll see a listing of all the classes that start with the word olive, and I'll choose olive. And Eclipse adds a required import statement at the top of the code. Even though this is my own class in my own application, the rules for imports are the same as with the Java class library. If the class that I'm using is in a package other than the one that contains the current class, I must import it. Next, I'll declare the variable name, which I'll set as olive, all lowercase, and I'll instantiate using new olive. Now you may be thinking, where is that method? If I go back to olive.java, notice that there's no definition of a constructor method or any other method that matches the class name. And the answer is that the Java compiler always adds a no arguments constructor method, a method that can be used to create an instance of the class. If you don't define one, one is defined for you. And that's what I'm calling here. So I've created an instance of the olive class, and now I'll call its method using olive dot, and when I type the dot, Eclipse shows me the list of methods that are available. The crush method is at the top of the list. All of the other methods that you see here are defined as a part of the class object. I'll talk later in the course about inheritance, but basically all of these methods are coming from a class named object, that is the superclass of all other classes in Java. I'll call the crush method, I'll save my changes and run the application, and there's the output. I called the object's instance method, and it was responsible for outputting that string to the console. Now I'll create one more instance method. So far my application knows how to crush a single olive, but clearly that's not enough to get enough olive oil. So now I'm going to create an olive press class. And once again, just like the olive, it'll be designed to be instantiated. I'll go to olivepress.java, and I'll create a public method named getOil. Once again, it will return void. The getOil method will receive an array of olive objects, and it'll loop through the olives and crush them one at a time. So I'll go to my method getOil, and I'll design it to receive an array of olives. I'll type in the word olive. I'll press Control Space and choose olive. That'll add the required import statement. I'll add the opening and closing brackets to indicate that I'm receiving an array of olives, and I'll name the array olives. Now within the method, I'll loop through the array. I'll type for and press Control space. I'll choose the for each syntax. And I'm saying, for each olive in the olives array, do something. And once again, just like I'm doing in the main application right now, I'll call olive.crush. I'll save those changes. I'll go back to the main application class and change it so that it's now going to crush a whole bunch of olives. I'll go back to main.java, and I'm going to take out this code. I don't need that anymore. And I'm going to declare an array of olives. Once again, I'll press Control space and choose olive. I already have my import statement at the top, so I don't need to redeclare it. I'll declare this as an array and name it olives. And then I'll use the syntax to initialize the array with values. I'll start with a brace, and then new olive, comma, new olive, comma, and new olive. So I'm creating 3 anonymous objects. I'm not assigning variable names to them. I'm just creating them and passing them into the array, and then immediately assigning the entire array to the olives array. Next, I'll create an instance of the olive press. I'll type in olive press. I'll press Control space. That adds an import statement for that class. I'll name it press, and I'll instantiate it, once again using the constructor method that the Java compiler adds for me. And finally, I'll call press.getOil, and I'll pass in the olives array. I'll make sure to add the semicolon at the end of the line, and I'll run the application, and because I created 3 olives in the array, I get the word ouch 3 times. So this is how instance methods work. Don't put in the static keyword, and it becomes an instance method that's called from an instance of the class rather than from the class definition. Once you know how to create and use instance methods, you're on your way to creating full-blown objects that incorporate both methods, that is functionality, and data.